There's a quiet truth that most people don't talk about. Intelligence often comes with isolation, not because smart people think they're better than others, but because their minds operate differently. They crave depth, not noise. They value meaning, not attention. In a world obsessed with constant connection, they often feel disconnected, not due to arrogance, but because they see and feel too much. Today, we're exploring 10 surprising reasons why intelligent people often avoid socializing, not out of pride, but out of emotional preservation, honesty, and self-awareness. Smart people live in a world that is constantly thinking, questioning, and searching for meaning. Their minds are not satisfied with surface-level interactions that skim across the top of life's deeper waters. When they engage in conversations filled with gossip, superficial opinions, or repetitive small talk, it feels like being trapped in a loop that doesn't feed their curiosity or spirit. For them, words carry energy, and conversations should be exchanges of insight, empathy, and truth. They crave discussions that open doors to new perspectives, the kind of dialogue that makes both people walk away changed. When they can't find that level of engagement, they withdraw, not out of arrogance or superiority, but out of quiet disappointment that real connection has once again been lost in the noise. To a deep thinker, time and energy are sacred currencies. They understand how draining it can be to spend those resources on interactions that add no value to their growth or peace. When a smart person walks away from a party early or chooses to spend an evening alone instead of socializing, it's not because they dislike people. It's because they know how to protect their inner space. They would rather have a quiet night of reflection or read a thought-provoking book than pretend to enjoy small talk that feels emotionally hollow. Their solitude is not a rejection of others. It's an act of self-respect. They are selective, not because they think they're better, but because they've learned that their energy deserves direction, not dispersion. This preference for depth over small talk often leaves them misunderstood. People may label them as distant, antisocial, or cold, but those labels are built on a misunderstanding of intention. A smart person doesn't seek to isolate themselves. They seek resonance. They long for conversations that feel alive, for the kind of exchange that ignites both the heart and the intellect. When they meet someone who can challenge their thinking and meet them in that sacred space of honesty, they open up with warmth, passion, and curiosity. Their apparent aloofness fades because they've finally found a person who speaks their emotional language. They don't need people who simply talk. They need people who connect. For them, connection without depth is like music without melody. It makes noise but never moves the soul. A smart person doesn't fear socializing. They fear the emptiness that sometimes hides within it. They thrive in authenticity, in moments when people drop the fast aid and allow vulnerability to take up space. They are not impressed by popularity or performance. They are impressed by self-awareness, by sincerity, by courage to be real. That's why small talk feels like an insult to their emotional intelligence. They are built to explore, to listen, to understand, and to connect in ways that feel timeless. And so when they choose solitude over socializing, it is not an escape from the world. It is a quiet rebellion against the shallowness of it. For intelligent people, authenticity is not a luxury. It's a necessity. They have a natural sensitivity to the energy around them, and they can sense when someone's words and intentions don't align. They feel the tension in false smiles, detect the discomfort behind exaggerated laughter, and notice when someone's kindness is performative rather than sincere. This emotional radar is both a blessing and a burden. It allows them to perceive truth beneath appearances, but it also makes social environments filled with pretense incredibly exhausting. They don't just listen to what people say, they feel why they're saying it. When the energy feels dishonest or forced, their entire being withdraws, even if their body remains in the room. Inauthenticity drains them because it disrupts their sense of safety. Intelligent people thrive in emotional honesty in spaces where people are free to be themselves without judgment. When they encounter environments where people wear masks to fit in, it feels suffocating. The endless pretending, the social scripts, the shallow compliments, all of it feels like static in their minds. They crave connection that is raw, imperfect, and real. They don't expect perfection, they expect truth. They find beauty in vulnerability, not performance. But in a world where image often matters more than integrity, authenticity can feel like a rare language that few people speak. And so when they don't hear that language, they fall silent, preferring solitude over forced connection. Their emotional awareness means they pick up on subtleties others miss. A hesitation in tone, a shift in expression, an inconsistency in behavior. These details may seem insignificant to most, but to a deep thinker, they reveal everything. They can tell when someone is pretending to like them, when flattery is strategic, or when attention comes with expectations. This awareness doesn't make them judgmental, it makes them wary. They understand how much energy it takes to maintain fast ADs, and they have no interest in participating. So rather than waste energy on social dynamics that lack sincerity, they protect themselves by stepping back. They are not antisocial. They are energetically selective. They know that emotional dishonesty, no matter how subtle, is corrosive to genuine connection. To intelligent people, authenticity is oxygen. It fuels trust, openness, and peace. Without it, every interaction feels like holding one's breath, surviving, but not truly living. That's why they're drawn to people who are real, even if they're flawed. They admire those who admit when they're uncertain, who express emotions without shame, who speak with integrity rather than performance. Those are the people who make them feel seen. When they find authenticity, they come alive, their energy flows freely, their guard softens, and they engage with warmth and depth. But when surrounded by pretense, their intuition tells them to retreat, to conserve their energy until they're in the company of truth again. It's not that they hate people, it's that they love truth too much to pretend. For intelligent people, feeling misunderstood is not an occasional frustration, it's a recurring H that shapes how they move through the world. Their minds are constantly processing, analyzing, and connecting ideas in ways that others may not immediately grasp. They notice patterns others overlook, feel emotions more deeply than they can articulate, and often question the very systems everyone else accepts. Because of this, their thoughts and perspectives can sometimes seem too much for casual conversation when they try to share what's on their mind. Whether it's a complex idea, an emotional truth, or an uncomfortable observation, they are often met with blank stares, deflection, or even judgment. Over time, this repeated disconnect teaches them a painful truth. It's easier to stay quiet than to be misunderstood. Being misunderstood doesn't just make them feel different. It makes them feel unseen. Intelligent people often long for emotional resonance, for someone who can not only understand their words, but also feel the meaning behind them. But because their thoughts run deep and their emotional awareness is high, they are often misread as intense, critical, or distant. They aren't trying to dominate a conversation or appear superior. They are simply trying to express themselves authentically. Yet, when their sincerity is mistaken for overthinking or arrogance, they start to pull back. They learn to edit themselves, to simplify their thoughts, soften their tone, and dilute their depth, not to fit in, but to avoid the pain of rejection. This cycle creates an inner conflict. On one hand, they crave meaningful connection. On the other, they fear that their true self will always be too much for others to handle. When they do try to share their deeper thoughts, they often see others growing uncomfortable, not because the ideas are wrong, but because they force people to think or feel beyond their comfort zone. So the intelligent person becomes the quiet observer. They listen more than they speak, and when they do speak, it's often measured, thoughtful, and careful. But behind that calm demeanor lies a restless mind full of unspoken insights. They know that their way of seeing the world is a gift, but it's a gift that can sometimes make them feel painfully isolated. Feeling misunderstood doesn't just happen intellectually. It happens emotionally. Intelligent people don't just think deeply, they feel deeply. They analyze emotions with the same intensity that they analyze ideas. This emotional depth makes them compassionate and empathetic, but it also makes them vulnerable to being dismissed or misinterpreted. When they express hurt, people may accuse them of being too sensitive. When they express joy, others might mistake it for exaggeration. The world often asks them to be smaller, quieter, easier to digest. And yet, the truth is their depth isn't something they can turn off. It's the core of who they are. It's what allows them to connect, to create, to love with intensity. But when that depth is consistently misunderstood, solitude starts to feel safer than socializing. So they withdraw not to escape others, but to preserve themselves. Alone, they don't have to explain their thoughts or justify their feelings. Alone, they can exist in full color without being asked to dim their light. In solitude, they finally feel understood, not by others, but by themselves. The quiet becomes a friend, the stillness a mirror. They learn that sometimes peace is better than being understood, and solitude is better than being half seen. Yet deep down, they still hope for that rare connection, the one where another person doesn't just hear them, but gets them, where understanding doesn't have to be earned, and where silence between two people feels like language itself. For intelligent people, solitude is not loneliness, it is sanctuary. While the world rushes to fill every moment with noise, they understand the quiet power of being alone. Their minds are constantly active, absorbing information, interpreting emotions, and analyzing experiences. Social situations, especially those filled with small talk or inauthenticity, can leave them mentally exhausted. Solitude becomes their way to breathe again. It is in those quiet spaces that they can hear their own thoughts clearly, unfiltered by external expectations. They don't fear being alone. They fear losing themselves in environments that demand constant performance. Their solitude is not an escape from life. It's a return to self, a place where they can untangle their thoughts, reconnect with their emotions, and find balance again. In solitude, they find clarity that social noise often clouds. When they are alone, they can process everything that happened during the day. The words people said, the energy they felt, the emotions they absorbed but didn't express. Because intelligent people are deeply empathetic, they often internalize the emotions of those around them, carrying invisible weight from interactions that others forget in moments. Solitude gives them the space to set those burdens down. They can finally exhale. In quiet moments, they can examine what truly belongs to them and what emotions they've picked up from others. This process of emotional sorting allows them to recharge, to clear their mind and reconnect with their inner calm. Their time alone is also where creativity and self-awareness flourish. Intelligent individuals often use solitude as a workshop for the soul, a sacred place to create, reflect, or imagine without interruption, whether through writing, reading, painting, or simply thinking. They channel their energy into understanding the world and themselves more deeply. Solitude allows their thoughts to mature, their feelings to settle, and their insights to grow roots. While many see stillness as inactivity, intelligent people see it as incubation, the quiet growth that happens before transformation. Alone, they can be honest with themselves, face their insecurities, and nurture the parts of their mind that the world rarely sees. But perhaps the most important reason smart people value solitude is because it offers emotional alignment. In a world that constantly pulls them in different directions, demanding their attention, energy, and empathy, solitude is the only place where they can realign with who they truly are. It's where they remember their priorities, their values, and their sense of purpose. It's where they can release the pressure to fit in and simply be. In that stillness, they find peace not just in silence, but in authenticity. They learn that solitude isn't the absence of connection, it's the presence of clarity. For them, alone time is not a retreat from the world, it's preparation to re-enter it with a stronger sense of self. They know that to show up meaningfully for others, they must first show up honestly for themselves. So when you see a person who prefers silence over small talk, who leaves early from crowded rooms, or who chooses to spend a Saturday night alone with their thoughts, don't mistake that for loneliness. What looks like isolation is often preservation. Intelligent people don't reject connection, they reject noise. They crave what is real, honest, and meaningful. Their solitude isn't a wall. It's a sanctuary. It's the place where they come home to themselves after being stretched too thin by a world that doesn't always understand their depth. In a culture that glorifies constant connection, solitude has become misunderstood, but smart people know that the ability to be alone is not a weakness. It's a superpower. It's the place where ideas are born, where healing begins, and where they can realign with their truth. Solitude teaches them discernment, that not every conversation deserves their attention, and not every relationship deserves their energy. They've learned that peace is not found in the crowd, it's found in the quiet space within. The truth is, intelligent people feel the world deeply. They see through its illusions, sense its contradictions, and feel every emotional vibration that most people ignore. It's not that they don't want to belong, they just refuse to belong at the cost of their authenticity. They choose depth over attention, honesty over acceptance, and silence over pretense. They understand that solitude doesn't separate them from the world. It connects them to it more consciously, more compassionately, and more truthfully. So if you are someone who feels misunderstood, who finds crowds overwhelming, or who finds peace in quiet moments, know this: there's nothing wrong with you. Your solitude is not a flaw. It's your way of listening to your own soul. The world may never fully understand why you love the quiet, but you don't need it to. What matters is that you understand yourself, because once you do, you'll realize that solitude is not the absence of love, but the beginning of it.